Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to start by thank you all for taking the time to attend our webinar today. My name is Hussam Habib, and I am the Country Director for Farmer to Farmer Food Safety and Quality Program. Farmer to Farmer is a USAID funded program, and it is implemented by Land O'Lakes International Development. Land O'Lakes is a U.S. farmer-owned agriculture cooperative that serves more than 300,000 farmers, and it is among the Fortune 300 businesses at the U.S. As a cooperative, agriculture cooperative, we provide several services to our members, including processing of their produced milk, supplying them with the animal feed, through our owned company, Purina, and also through our owned Winfield United, the largest supplier of crop inputs at the U.S., including crop protection inputs, pesticides, seeds, and crop nutrients and fertilizers. Land O'Lakes International Development is a non-for-profit organization that leverages corporate expertise to implement agriculture and food programs around the world. It's founded in 1981 by Land O'Lakes Inc. And we are partnering with the donors like the USAID, USDA, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. We work all across Africa, Asia, and Middle East. And we are implementing programs in Egypt at the past 15 years, more than 15 years actually, working in agriculture and food sectors. Historically, Farmer to Farmer used to provide technical support in agriculture production and management. We have implemented several volunteer assignments with HEA, including good farming practices, pest management, irrigation, and post-harvest handling for several horticultural crops. Land O'Lakes International Development is implementing the USAID funded Farmer to Farmer Food Safety and Quality, which is a volunteering program. And our special focus is food safety and quality. We know that the food safety environment in Egypt is changing, specifically after the establishment of the Egyptian National Food Safety Authority, NAFSA. We understand as well that Egyptian food businesses are working hard to update their food safety systems, upgrade their infrastructures, and implement prerequisite programs, PRPs, at the end, and they are trying hard to disseminate the food safety culture among employees and stakeholders to ensure the proper application of food safety practices. Accordingly, our main focus now is to help the Egyptian food handlers and facilities to utilize the expertise of the U.S. volunteer experts in food safety and quality. So usually and traditionally, our U.S. volunteer experts are working directly with their Egyptian counterparts, working in farms, visiting and working in food processing facilities all over Egypt. But due to COVID-19, we all understand that our U.S. volunteers are working remotely from their homes and offices, as we are doing today. In collaboration with the Horticulture Exporting Improvement Association, HEA, the Chamber of Food Industries, CFI, the USAID-funded ERAS project, we have responded to the need of the Egyptian food sector to have a knowledge source for integrated pest management and its application in food facilities and fresh produce pack houses. We all understand that most of the food businesses, either they hire service providers pest control companies to implement pest control programs in their facilities, and some of them actually they are not qualified, or the food processors as themselves, they don't understand what is they are doing. They are not involved in practicing the activities, and this is one of the most important needs now. At the same time, some of those facilities, they are managing the internal pest control programs themselves without having trained personnel. So one of the problems as well for pest management, that the knowledge of pest management are scattered among so many sources. We don't have this in one source, very easy to reach, specifically in Arabic. It's easy to find sources in English, but in Arabic, or for those who don't understand English, it's very difficult for them to have this source. The last thing, that food processors talk mainly about pest control in food facilities, not integrated pest management. And traditionally in Egypt, this means applying pesticides and let's say facing the problem at the beginning and then act. But integrated pest management is much different. It's all about preventative measures. So we are here today to launch the IPM in Food Facilities Manual that was developed by our US volunteer expert, Mr. Jerry Heaps, the entomologist and food safety expert, who worked hardly at the past few months to develop this manual. All of you got soft copies of the manual in Arabic and English. And one important thing to mention here, that to make this manual available for those who do not understand English or they don't have good English skills, we have worked with our one of our local volunteer experts, Dr. Ayman Awais. He's the professor of entomology in Fayoum University, Faculty of Agriculture, Fayoum University. And he helped us in the scientific translation to Arabic and reviewing and editing the manual. So thank you for both Dr. Ayman and Jerry for their hard work. Get back to our agenda. We'll have a welcoming speech from Mr. Medhat Al-Miligi, the Agriculture Service Manager in HEA. Then we'll have the presentation from Mr. Jerry Heaps about integrated pest management in fresh produce packhouses. And finally, we'll have the open discussion and questions and answers. I'd like firstly to introduce Mr. Medhat Al-Miligi, the Agriculture Service Manager in HEA, and he will welcome you and talk about HEA activities and efforts to support fresh produce packhouses in Egypt. So over to you, Mr. Medhat.
Volunteers in several issues, environmental issues and economical issues, technical support. I would like to thank all of you. Landolex organization and Farmer to Farmer project were successfully working with us for years. For HEA, now we are doing the technology transfer. The first job we do is extension service through technology transfer. The United States of America definitely is one of the big hubs. We are getting help in the technical support through UC Davis, through other universities. We do also the quality. We introduced the quality control in the late 90s to our members. It was the first time to have somebody inspecting a box of fruits, a box of grapes, a box of strawberries. And we went through this quality issue, starting with the quality control, then the quality assurance, then the packing house management, then somehow how to manage the flow inside packing house. And lately we have established a new department for certifying the private sector companies. It's called HEA-Cert. HEA-Cert is our tool to adjust the issue of certification in Egypt. I think we are doing a good job in this issue so far. That's it, briefly. That's what is HEA doing. And thank you very much. I don't want to use the time of everybody. And we have, I think, to go to Jerry to the focal point of this webinar. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Medhat, for this introduction and welcoming the attendees and introducing HEA and its efforts to support the horticulture sector and fresh produce packhouses. Now it's time to present the U.S. entomologist and food safety expert, Mr. Jerry Heaps. His presentation will cover the IPM in fresh produce packhouses. And he will introduce the manual he developed. All of you got soft copies of this manual, Arabic and English. Jerry used to work for Land O'Lakes, and in Land O'Lakes, we are encouraging our staff to volunteer in with farmer to farmer in several countries. And Jerry volunteered with us before in Egypt. This was back in 2016. He was a member of a team of 3 employees from Land O'Lakes who conducted an international training course in hazard analysis and critical control points, HACCP, as a certified trainer from the Royal Society for Public Health. So he worked before with food safety personnel from different Egyptian food facilities, including fresh produce packhouses. Also, he visited and worked with and inside actually provided technical support for food businesses in Egypt. So please try to benefit from his experience and knowledge, share, learn, and discuss. And if you have any question, feel free to, or comment, feel free to post it at the question and answers, Q&A, the bottom bar or the chat. It's okay, any of them. We'll have 15 minutes at the end of the webinar for discussion and answering your questions. So thank you, and please start, Jerry.
Thank you, Hussam, and good afternoon, everyone. I appreciate your time, and thank you for joining us today for this webinar. Please refer to the manual for detailed information. This presentation cannot begin to cover IPM in structures in food plants and packing houses, etc. So I encourage you to use the manual, do a deep dive, and learn further details of the information we're going to cover. What is integrated pest management? It's a pretty simple explanation, but it's not simple to apply. There are many pest control tools available for us to use, and integrated pest management, or IPM, means that we should be using all of those tools at the same time to control pests. Pest control and IPM is not just one thing. We have to use a variety of pest control methods to control pests. For example, there are physical pest control tools that we can use. And it simply means we need to exclude and keep pests out of buildings. If we have doors open and windows open that aren't properly screened or closed or sealed, pests will come into the facility, any facility, whether it be a food plant or a produce house or a packing house. Pests are a symptom. They take advantage of our mistakes. So if we leave doors open and windows open, They will come in, they will fly in, they will crawl in, and we have to keep them out. We have to seal holes in the building. If pipes come in through a wall or pipes come in to various rooms in a facility, we need to seal them, seal around them so the pests cannot enter the facility or enter rooms through those holes. Again, if we don't want trees, we don't want vegetation around the plant because that attracts pests to live there, and pests could use those trees and shrubs as harborages. They can follow the limbs of a tree right into the roof of a plant perhaps and get in the facility that way. So as you can see, there are many things we can do around the facility and in the facility to seal pests out, keep them out, exclude them. And that's one of the ways that we can use to, again, simultaneous use of various ways to keep pests out of facilities. Two other ways besides physical are chemical and biological. So again, with IPM, we have physical, chemical, and biological things we can do all at the same time to help us with pest control. For chemicals, sure, there are pesticides we can use, but they alone will not control pests. So IPM and pest control is much more than using a pesticide. Many kinds of pesticides. All pesticides have labels. We're not going to spend a lot of time today talking about specific pesticides. Again, every country has their own laws and regulations for pesticides. Obviously, the US has the rules. The Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, controls that in the US. Egypt has their own rules, as all countries around the world do. So again, because I'm not familiar with specific uses in Egypt, again, we're not going to spend a lot of time on specific chemicals, but you are aware, of course, that they are available for use in pest control. Besides sprays, there are many baits for pest control, many baits for roaches, many baits for flies and rodents. There are insect growth regulators. Again, just a class of pesticide that prevent immature insects from becoming breeding adults. They don't kill adults. So it's just another technology that we can use to help prevent pests from reproducing. For biological control, there are insect pheromone traps. You may be familiar with these. They are used in agricultural settings as well as in establishments that may handle food or produce. They're very specific for insects, species specific. So you have to be familiar with what insects you want to trap and if there is a pheromone trap available for them. There are not traps available for all insects, so very specific. And it's a chemical scent that attracts insects into usually a glue board that traps them on the glue. So just a form of biological integrated pest management we can use. Also, insects are cold-blooded. It means they need warm temperatures. They don't do very well in cold temperatures at all. And it doesn't have to be freezing. For example, insects don't reproduce very well under 50 degrees Fahrenheit. So if there's a chance to use cold to help manage your pests, you can do that. Obviously, freezing kills them. The colder, the quicker. So 0 degrees Fahrenheit is better than 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Again, and you have to give cold time to penetrate. So exposed insects may be killed in a short period of time, but if you're trying to freeze insects, you have produce on a pallet, for example, you need to give time for that cold to penetrate to the core of the pallet. So it's not simply putting it in the freezer for a few minutes. It may take days, depending on what your temperature is. So just an example of different types of ways you can manage insects with temperature. Again, they don't like cold or cool temperatures, so if there's a chance to cool an area to help control your pests, that will work well. There are a couple of non-pesticide examples of IPM. Here's a picture of a mechanical wind-up rodent trap. It's called a catch-all, KETCHALL. That isn't as important as the way it works. You can please use the internet to look for examples of IPM, of pest control. And if you put in, again, rodent control or wind-up trap for rodent control or snap traps, you know, any example here in the slide, you can use the internet to get more information on it. So the wind-up trap is available. You wind it up a few times and the rodent enters the hole on the side, and there's a tripper plate in there, and it flips the rodent into a portion of the trap where it can't get out. A large rat may be too big to go in the hole, so we usually use these traps for mice, but they're very effective. They can catch more than one rodent at a time. For any of these traps, remember, rodents leave scents, smells wherever they go. Their feces and their urine leave a scent, and they have pheromones that they leave. So these traps really work well the more rodents you catch in them. So the point is, you don't need to thoroughly clean and scrub these traps every time you catch a rodent. You need to empty them and may give them a quick clean to remove obvious debris, but again, the smells are left there. They work better the more rodents they catch because of that. It actually attracts more rodents to them. So that's just a little tip that you don't need to sterilize or completely clean them anytime you catch a rodent. So we have wind-up traps. There's a snap trap for mice. There's a tin cap mouse trap. Again, they have a little opening there that the mice can go in, but they can't get out. There's a little, again, a tripper plate in there that when the mice go in, it goes down and they can't get back out. So it again catches more than one mouse at a time. It's just a little different design than the wind-up trap. You don't have to do anything with it other than put it on the floor. So again, you don't. Some of these traps, again, the tin cap mouse trap, you can put a glue board in and catch the mice in there on the glue board, but again, that isn't necessary. So just a couple examples of different ways you can catch mice. Again, rats are usually too big for these devices. Okay, another non-pesticide example is simply using steel wool or something similar to that and caulk to put around holes around pipes or in walls where rodents or insects could get in, and then seal that up. So you need to do this, and using caulk by itself or caulk in combination with various construction materials works well to seal holes to keep pests out. Very inexpensive, very simple, but very, very critical for IPM. Another picture of a rat trap, just to show you that, again, it's magnified here in the slide, but rat traps are bigger than mice snap traps because obviously rats are bigger. So just be aware, if you are dealing with rats, you need a bigger snap trap. They don't catch mice very well, and vice versa. You know, a smaller trap for mice won't catch rats. So just to be aware, there are different sizes of traps, and if you're dealing with them both, you need to have a combination of both. If you're dealing with mice or rats, just make sure you're using the right traps. Rats are very wary of their environment. They will avoid new objects in their environment. So if you're trying to use traps for rats, You need to bait them and set them in environment, but don't set the trigger. Just let them get used to the trap for a few days, coming to it and perhaps eating the bait. And once you realize this is happening, then you can go back and set the trap. So be aware that rats are again very sensitive to new objects you put in their environment, and they'll stay away from a trap if you put a trap out and set it right away and it goes off and catches a rat. Again, other rats learn real quick to avoid that. So again, the manual goes into detail about this, but just be aware that there's a sensitivity with rats to new devices in their environment, and mice don't seem to worry about that too much. So if you're dealing with mice, you can put bait in there and set the trap right away, and they usually aren't that wary as rats are. And glue boards are a very simple, inexpensive way to catch anything that may crawl into them. They catch insects, they catch scorpions, for example, they catch lizards, they catch insects, catch birds if a bird will wander on one. But so again, a simple thing you can use, usually inside, around the perimeter of the facility to catch pests. Keep them clean, keep them dry, because obviously if that gets on the glue, it's not as effective. Many of the traps that you may buy for rodents, for example, bait stations, if you use them outside, you can open them up and they may have a glue board in them, or you can put a glue board in them to help catch the rodent or pests or insects that might crawl in there. But again, just like caulk or steel wool, glue boards are fairly inexpensive and very effective at catching and monitoring for pests. You can put them around and actually see what you're catching. And the point is not to fill them up with pests. So if you're using traps or glue boards, the goal is not to fill them up with pests, because obviously you have a real issue if that's occurring in a short period of time. The point is to use them as a monitor and use them as a check. And yes, you may catch pests in them, but you need to figure out the root cause. What is causing the pest to get in the facility? Again, are doors being left open, windows left open, they're not being screened? You have holes in walls, you have holes around pipes? Are they using, again, electrical lines or conduits or anything like that to get in the facility? So just be aware, you might feel good by filling them up with pests, but that is not the goal. Sticky fly paper, again, pheromone traps are another example of they're not pesticides, it's just glue. So again, a simple tool, hang the fly paper, catches flies. But again, if you're filling it up in a short period of time, you have an issue with the flies are getting into the plant, or they're breeding inside. So you need to find out, what's causing that. And just be aware. Pheromone traps are very species specific. You need to know what insects you're trying to trap and if a specific trap is available for them. So they won't catch all insects. For example, in food plants, we usually use them for perhaps Indian meal moth or cigarette beetles. There are some traps available for stored product insects like flower beetles. In the ag environment, I know in the U.S. They use them in fruit orchards to catch certain fruit pests. They may use them in other ag instances to catch a specific pest of that crop. But again, they're very species specific. Again, simple screening for windows or doors. If you need a door open for ventilation, you can make a screen insert for that, or again, for dock doors, for example, there are commercial screen inserts you could buy and place in that situation if you need to open for ventilation. But something as simple as screens are very useful in keeping pests out, birds and flying insects, for example. If you have doors open and windows open without screens, or ways to keep pests out, they will come into your facility. And it's a losing battle. You can work real hard inside to do the right things, but something as simple as screening an open door or window will help a lot to contribute to successful IPM. Sanitation is critical for pest control. It is pest control. Remember, pests are a symptom of an issue, and usually it's sanitation related. We leave food debris around, whatever that may be. In a food plan, it may be different than what's in a packing house. But again, if you have fruits and vegetables in a packing house, if you leave debris around, it's going to attract pests, especially things like flies and rodents are going to be highly attractive to that situation. So typically food debris has been allowed to accumulate, and this attracts pests. You should be using what we call a master cleaning schedule for other than daily sanitation tasks. That's essential for IPM. Again, there's two types of cleaning we usually do in a facility that handles food. There's production cleaning. That's the day-to-day cleaning we do as people work around their areas, as food falls on the floor or food accumulates on equipment. You know, we clean that away to make it more easier to work on that equipment and in that environment. Makes it more efficient. There's also deep cleaning, and deep cleaning is simply when the equipment is off and we're not working on it, that's when people can get into that piece of equipment and do a more effective and efficient job at the cleaning it. They can perhaps they should be taking off chain guards and getting into equipment, getting exposure to that equipment so they can clean inside where food accumulates. So again, production cleaning and deep cleaning. And again, have a master cleaning schedule. There should be examples of that in the manual, but we typically use them for other than daily sanitation tasks. Like there may be things you do weekly around your facility. There may be things you do monthly, or there may be things you do quarterly or every 6 months. So again, those are examples of items you would put on a master cleaning schedule to trigger the reaction to make sure those items are done at the proper time. And you simply put the cleaning task and when you want to clean down one side of a piece of paper, and across the top you put the days of the month, and check off the box and initial it when that cleaning task is done. So it doesn't have to be that fancy or on a computer. It can simply be a chart or even a piece of paper to have that. If you're dealing with store product pests, because they can go through a complete life cycle in about 4 to 6 weeks under ideal conditions, the warmer the quicker. We recommend that you deep clean those pieces of equipment and areas every 30 days, about once a month. If you can get in there and do a good deep cleaning, you remove that material that can attract those specific insects to reproduce and get an infestation going. So, for flies and other insects like that, you may get in a packing house, a produce house. You're going to have to clean items more frequently than that, because again, flies in a warm environment such as you might have in Egypt, they can go through a life cycle in perhaps 7 to 10 days. So again, that's why you need to know what insects you're dealing with, so you know their life cycle. Pest control is not the same for every pest. So we'll talk later on being real specific in identifying the pests you're dealing with, so you know their life cycle and their habitats and what they like and don't like. The first thing you must do in IPM is identify the pest. Now, you don't need to be an entomologist, for example, or have a specific degree to identify these pests. Again, I recommend you use the internet If you put in a simple search for common pictures of common flies or common rodents or common roaches, you know, they'll bring you up all kinds of pictures of these specific pests. But you really need to know, for example, what kind of fly it is, what kind of roach, bird, beetle, moth, rodent, etc. Why is this important? Because you need to know where it lives. Does it live inside or out? What does it like? What doesn't it like? What does it like for food? Does it like to live in wet areas, or does it like to live in dry areas? Again, every pest is different. So what works for one won't work for another, and it won't work for all of them. So you need to be as specific as possible. Go to local experts, for example, if you need help. Again, use pictures. Get a magnifying glass if you need help with seeing the pest. But once you see the common pests in your area, once you get familiar with them, you know, you'll become very, very efficient at identifying pests, you know, with a quick look. So just a couple of tips of what you can do to identify the pests the first time you may see them. You may need to take a sample, get a little sample bag, and, you know, put the pests in the bag. And, you know, if you put it in the freezer and kill it, you can do that. If you put it in alcohol to kill insects, but that's just a quicker way to kill a bug if you need to take a closer look at it. So again, proper pest ID allows you to know what it likes. Insects and rodents, they need basically 4 things, just like we do. They need a harborage, a place to live. They need water, they need warmth, and they need food. Whatever you can do to identify where these harborages are and eliminate them, you'll do a lot to getting rid of the pest and successful IPM. You stress the population. So if you can remove all of these at one time, that's great. But again, if you can remove the food, if you can, again, make the area colder, that they don't like it for warmth, that'll stress the population. Get rid of the water, you know, fix water leaks around the facility. Don't let water accumulate outside. It can attract pests, birds or rodents, for example, to use it for drinking. Whatever you can do in the environment in and around the packing house or facility to eliminate a harborage will help with IPM. And the manual gives examples of, you know, specific sources, as I said, for pest ID. In facilities that handle food, you know, we call it GMPs, good manufacturing practices. Basic GMP compliance is critical to IPM. What do we mean by that? Some basic GMP examples are, again, keeping doors and windows closed or properly screened. Now, I've said that many times. It's repetition is good teaching, but it's just, that's one of the most simple things you can do in a facility to help keep pests out, is keep doors and windows closed or screen them, and make sure the bottom sills of doors are properly sealed. Again, if you shut a door and you look at the bottom of the door and you can see light on the outside as you're looking from inside, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't be able to see light. So again, mice can crawl in that area very easily, and so can insects. But you know, again, you can use a brush strip or a piece of rubber that you may be able to make in-house and put in the bottom of that door sill to seal. Or again, you can buy commercially available strips of those that type of material to seal the bottom of a door. But something as simple as that goes a long way to successful IPM. People in a facility should only eat, drink, or smoke in designated areas. And that's so you could control that type of activity. If you allow people to wander around your facility inside and out and eat, drink, or smoke, typically they leave their debris behind, and that can attract pests. You know, food wrappers, empty food cups, empty things that people have used to eat or drink. If they're littered around your facility, it can attract pests. So that's why you want to control where people can eat, drink, or smoke, so you can keep that area clean. You should have a food safety team in your facility that does periodic inspections. You want to have different departments involved in having members on this team. So again, a packing house may not be as complex as a food plant, but the point is you want to have members on this team that may come from different departments and that can give you different expertise on this food safety team. You want to conduct, I recommend at least once a month, you conduct a detailed sanitation, GMP, and IPM inspection of the facility. This is not really an audit. You may look at paperwork. You know, to me, an audit is looking at more paperwork than actually spending time in the facility on the floor doing the inspection. So you might look at some paperwork, but this food safety team really should do a detailed inspection. Get out there on the floor of the facility, in the facility, look inside and outside. If you can safely get on the roof, don't forget looking at the roof area of your facility to make sure there's nothing going on the roof that may attract pests. You want to do this safely, obviously, but for example, if it's a flat roof, perhaps some ventilation equipment may be leaking, or there may be other reasons you want to get up on that roof and look for things that may be attracting pests. Is water accumulating on a flat roof that may attract pests? If there are rain gutters, is the rain gutter plugged up and not draining properly that could attract pests? So again, don't forget the roof area if you can get a look at that periodically in a safe manner. You can rotate these members on this food safety team. It helps in cross-training. And again, depending on the size of your facility, if it's really large, you can divide it up into different areas and do a different area a week and just rotate around the facility, you know, once a month to make sure you cover all areas. Where do you inspect? Again, I mentioned you want to do inside and outside. Don't forget dock areas. Don't forget if you have storage areas outside, if you have a garage or some other building you may store equipment in, look at those areas. You're looking for anything that can allow pests and their needs, you know, to attract them. Yeah, again, typically it's poor sanitation or doors or windows are left open. But again, when trucks come, if trucks come to your facility and load and unload items, you know, there may be some litter associated with that. They should be cleaning those trucks. So again, you don't want them to sweep out those trucks and clean them when they're at your plant, but if they do that, make sure you look at dock areas and any other of those areas inside and out where there may be litter or debris accumulating. We talked about while nice trees and shrubs and flowers look nice around a plant, these attract pests. So if you can, don't plant them right next to the facility. Put them out away from the facility if you want, so it doesn't attract the pests right up to the plant where they can get in. Something as simple as lights. The way you use lights around your facility can have an effect on IPM. Certain lights attract flying insects more than others, like mercury vapor lights. Again, there's a section in the manual on this, so it's not to make you an expert on using lights, but just be aware that different types of lights have different attractiveness to insects. People say, if I use LED lights, do they attract insects? All lights will attract insects, but LED lights attract them less. So if you can use them around your facility, that may be a good choice. There's also, you know, metal halide lights, halogen lights. They usually give you the orange or yellowish type of glow. They're not as attractive as mercury vapor, but they will attract some flying insects too. Try not to put lights right above a door. right above a window or something like that, because that will could attract the insects right to that location. So you can put lights away from the facility and shine them back on the facility if you need that light. So again, just a little tip there, that if you put a light right above a dock door or a personnel door and you leave it on and that door is left open, it's going to attract flying insects at night, and they may go right into the plant. Be aware that if you use high pressure air or water and you use it to clean up debris, you're just dispersing perhaps insect pests into the environment. So I recommend you remove large accumulations of debris with either vacuuming or sweeping first before you use high pressure air or water, and use it sparingly. Remember, if you have a big pile of debris on the floor and you use high pressure water to move it to a drain area, just think about all the debris that you're aerosolizing and you're putting into the air. And the same thing with high pressure air. If you just use it to blow down overhead areas, up at the ceiling areas, you're just scattering that debris from one area to another. So I recommend you use high pressure air or water sparingly, and try to use other manners in sanitation to remove that debris versus that. Again, pre-clean an area. Use shovels and brooms and squeegees and things like that to clean the large areas of debris away first before you get into other sanitation and cleaning exercises. So you pre-clean, clean, rinse, and sanitize if needed. Keep dry areas dry. May not be as important as in packing houses or produce houses, but if you have grain around or flour around, you don't want to get water into those environments, because again, it can get salmonella growth going, for example. It can get other microbial growth going. So just a little tip there. If you're in a wet environment, obviously it's wet, and it's okay to use water and have that area wet, for example. But if you're in a dry environment and you don't use a lot of water, just be aware, if you can keep that area dry, it may be better off because of the issues you may get in with microbial growth. Seal wall holes, fix water leaks, inspect floor expansion joints, something as simple as that. If they're sealed and those expansion joints become open, again, if it's a large enough opening, rodents could come up through there if they're living underneath the concrete slab, for example, but ants and other insects can come up through there. So just make sure those expansion joints are properly sealed, inspected, and cleaned. Do you know your suppliers? Do you have a good relationship with them? Do you know who inspects them? Have you ever inspected them? Do you know how their IPM program is working? Why is this important? Why is supplier control important? It's so they don't ship you their problems. They're not shipping you their pests. Obviously, you should do a documented inspection of all incoming goods and trailers. Just like if you ship material out, again, you should do a documented inspection of those trailers to make sure there's no foreign material in them, or pests or litter. And again, do you know your customers you're shipping to? Have you ever visited them? Do you have a relationship with them? This is all important. A lot of good IPM and good pest control is relationship building. It's knowing your customers. Have you seen them? Can you talk to them? Can you pick up the phone and call them and talk to them about an issue if one may arise? So it's just good to know your suppliers, whether they're incoming or outgoing, so you can check up on their food safety and their IPM programs, for example. Who does your pest control? As Hassan mentioned, a lot of your businesses or other food plants may contract that out to a pest control operator. It's a third party company that handles it. Whoever does that job, you know, they need to really have a passion for it. It's hard work, it's complex work, it's technical work. It's more than just carrying a spray, you know, a container with a pesticide in it and spraying pesticide. So these people need to get training. They need to have continuous training, ongoing training, you know, on the technical aspects of IPM and pest control. The bottom line is, though, the food plant is responsible for their pest control. The packing house or produce house is responsible. You may hire somebody to do the work, but at the end of the day, you're responsible to make sure that they're doing a good job and it's successful. If you get a regulatory inspector comes and does an inspection and finds a pest control issue, you really can't say, well, it's not my job. You know, I hire somebody to do it and it's their job. So just remember that, yes, it really is at the end of the day, your job to make sure pest control is successful. You must have a documented program. No matter who does it, you need to have it written down. What is the program? What is the expectation? What pests do you need control? And be specific. What happens if an unexpected you know, pest issue may occur? Can you call this company up and will they respond? So you need to have a really robust and detailed documented pest control program, no matter who does it. Again, a pest control person must have initial and continued training. You know, we mentioned that. There's online training available. You know, many universities offer online training. I give you a couple examples in the manual on some US universities that do that. But again, in any event, there needs to be initial and continued training. The pest control person must be monitored and checked for quality control. Again, if it's internal or external, somebody at your facility needs to be responsible to oversee that program and go around with this individual or individuals and see what they're doing and check them for quality control. It's a good way to learn too. It's a good way to cross-train. You know, they learn, if they're from the outside, they learn about your operation and you learn what they do. Again, if they're internal people, again, it's a good way to, again, cross-train and get ways to pick up knowledge about the intricacies of IPM and pest control. IPM takes time, it takes patience, and it takes money. So you need a budget. Something as simple as you know, the plant management needs to be committed to IPM and pest control. So they need to, you know, have a budget available to make sure it's done properly. Pest control provider must communicate issues up and down the facility management chain. And what does that mean? Again, if it's done in-house, or you hire somebody, they need to let you know what's going on. You need to meet with them regularly. You need to meet with them every time, you know, they may visit your facility, for example. If it's an outside pest control person, you know, they shouldn't leave the plant after their service unless they meet with you and talk with you and explain to you what they found. They should be leaving you a written service report also. So again, no matter who does the pest control or IPM, there must be communication within the facility to make sure everybody knows what's going on and how they can contribute to successful, you know, IPM. If IPM failures occur, what are some of the common reasons? Well, a simple reason may be, you know, you misidentified the pest. For example, if you have dealing with Norway rats or roof rats, controlling them are different. Again, roof rat control is different than a Norway rat and vice versa. A fruit fly or a drain fly or a house fly, yes, they're a fly, but their specific controls are different. You have to again know what's attracting them and know where they're living, know where they're breeding to eliminate those sources. If you have an Indian meal moth, for example, it's different than a moth flying in from the outside that may come in, typically at night. If it's flying around outside at lights and they fly in a facility, yes, they're both moths, but their control is different. If you're dealing with roaches, roach control is different depending on which specific roach it is. So that's why, is it a German roach? Is it an Oriental roach? Is it an Australian roach? Many different kinds of roaches. So their control is different. And ant control is different. Again, many different kinds of ant. You may find an ant in your facility. Yeah, it's an ant, but you need to try to find out, again, what kind of ant it is. Is it a carpenter ant? Is it a pharaoh ant? A pavement ant? Just, many different kinds of ants. So use some technical resources. Again, use the internet. Use a magnifying glass to get a good look at your pest, for example, and see if you can match that with the picture that you can find on the internet. And again, once you do it the first time, you're really good at identifying it, thereafter. Constantly reassess your IPM. Have you missed using an IPM tool, or have you misused perhaps an IPM tool that's available? Do you need further training? Do you need to change your approach? Because the continued IPM failure will not correct itself. So you may be only looking at IPM and pest control during the day, for example. Have you ever gone into that facility at night and visited that facility to see what's going on there at night? Or when it's not in operation? That's an example of, you may need to change the way you're doing IPM. Focus on proper sanitation and GMP compliance. Those are critical for successful IPM. Insect light traps are another non-pesticidal tool we have available to help us in IPM. You may have seen them, you may use them, but it's not as simple as putting an insect light trap up and letting it go. They emit UV wavelength light that attracts certain flying insects only. They don't attract all flying insects. So again, you need to know what pests you have around, what flying insect pests you have, and see if UV light will attract them. Usually you catch them on a glue board. You should be looking at these glue boards, once a week, checking these traps, for example. Document when you check them. Try to document what you're catching, be as specific as possible versus it's a beetle, it's a moth, or it's a fly. Because that can tell you, well, how are these pests getting in here? Again, somebody leaving doors open or windows open, or maybe a screen is missing or a screen is damaged. So try to know your target pests and what you're catching in those light traps. Don't place them too high, as again, you need to check them once a week. So many times I go into a facility and they have a trap high up near the ceiling, and you say, well, geez, how often do you check that trap? And they say, well, not too often because it's really hard to get to. So don't put these traps in areas where you can't check them quickly and safely each week. If you're targeting houseflies, for example, usually houseflies fly at about 4 to 6 feet above the ground. So if you put an insect light trap at 5 feet, for example, it should do a good job in catching houseflies. You put these traps at points to intercept flying insects as they enter a plant, usually inside a dock area. But don't put them in areas where if you go outside and look inside, you could see these traps, because if you can see them standing outside your facility, insects can see them and you'll attract them inside very easily. So that's usually why you put them on the, on a wall, on a backside of a wall where you can't see them from the outside. typically we say 25 feet. If you place them, if you can't see them within 25 feet, that's usually a good guide as far as not attracting pests in from the outside. Don't place these traps in production areas, as you don't want to attract the insects into these areas that they could contaminate the food. Be aware that the bulb burns out over time. Our eyes cannot sense it, but insects' eyes can, so the traps aren't that effective. Typically every 6 months we recommend changing bulbs. The manufacturer may give you some guidelines there, but the real important point is the bulbs need changing. Don't wait until the bulbs burn out, because they're way past their prime and they're not working very effectively. So again, our eyes can't sense that, but the bug's eyes can. Outside flying insects, again, are only active during warm months. So if you live in an area that gets cold temperatures, you don't need these traps on year round. You can turn them off. So just be aware of that. So there shouldn't be a lot of insects flying around outside or active outside during cold weather. So you don't need to have those traps on. Typically these traps, insect light traps, are used to monitor activity. They're not used for control. In summary, again, use the manual to get much more detailed information on IPM and specific pest control. All the things we talked about, I go into detail in the manual. Pests are a symptom of a problem. You need to properly identify them first and foremost. Identify the issues that attract them: food, water, warmth, harborages. That's what they need. What can you do in your environment to stress that population? One solution does not fix all. Sanitation is critical, and again, first and foremost in pest control. If you don't clean up, the pests will keep coming back. So you need to really keep on top of sanitation and GMPs and cleaning in your facility, inside and outside. Be patient, be thorough, seek outside expertise if needed. Don't ignore pests. They won't go away. Some people say, well, I only saw one roach. I only saw a few flies. I only saw a few mice. Yeah, but you're only seeing the ones that aren't that smart, that are out in the open. So just be aware, if you ignore the pests, they won't go away on their own. You need to attack them quickly and efficiently, and use physical, chemical, and biological ways to do that. IPM is really a team effort. If you're doing pest control yourself, or if you hire somebody, again, don't rely on that one person or persons to do it. It's a team effort. What you do every day in and around that facility affects IPM and pest control. All of your practices that you do contributes to successful or unsuccessful IPM. All plant personnel must be involved. Obviously, plant management must be committed to identify what resources are needed and properly budget for them. Okay, we have time for questions. I've covered a lot of material. Assam, if you're listening, we can go to questions right now.
Okay, thank you, Jerry, for the presentation. Very valuable and informative. Okay, guys, please, if any of you has a question or a comment, please feel free to post it. Okay, let's start by, yeah, we have a question about the light traps. For proper use, how many units enough regarding area, and what is the correct place to use and hang that trap?
Right. Again, we typically use those in dock areas, in areas you may receive items or trucks come in. You only need to you know, you only may need 1 or 2 traps in those areas. So it depends on the size of the room, but that's just look at the size of the room and the area you want to use them in, and you may only need a few traps. And you can talk to the technical people. The companies that sell these traps can give you some technical information. Just try to get past the sales pitch. You know, these people want to sell you material, but you don't need a whole lot of traps in a small area to do an effective job.
Okay, thank you. We have a question. This question was from Mr. Michael. So Mr. Muhammad Said, his question about if ILTs is considered a pesticide example, why not snap traps or mice trap considered as pesticide example?
Because you're not using a chemical pesticide. That was the only reason for that. So again, there are chemicals we can use and we do use for pest control, but there are many people want to say, well, are there non-chemical things I can use for pest control? Yes, there are. So those are just examples of many, you know, things you can use for pest control that aren't specific pesticides.
Thank you. Mr. Romani Nagih, what is the difference between pest management and pest control?
Really nothing. You know, pest management is pest control, and if you do pest control, you are managing pests. So it's just different terms. To me, they're interchangeable, and if you call it pest management or pest control, you know, to me, it's doing the same thing. So I don't have a problem with either of those terms.
Yeah, in Egypt, we consider, as you talk about pest control, it's killing pests. So using pesticides. So okay. not using preventative measures before the pest infestation. So this is what the traditional thinking about, or the traditional concept about pest control in Egypt.
Yes, and that's good. That's very good. I can see that point. Some people think the same way here in the U.S. You know, pest control some people might think it as the active occurrence of actually going after pests, and it may involve killing them. But again, at the end of the day, if you call it pest control or pest management, you know, you're getting the desired results at the end of the day.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, how can Mr. Muhammad Isam, how can I trace suppliers' IPM, and how can I know that their IPM system is strong or weak?
Well, if you can visit them, that's one of the main things you can do. If you can actually go visit them and take a look at their facility and see their pest control program, see their IPM, that's probably the easiest way. If that's not that easy or they're far away, see if somebody else inspects them, see if they get a third-party inspection, and if they can supply you a copy of that inspection. Or again, see if they'll send you, you know, their pest control program, send you examples of what they're doing. So an on-site visit is great, or getting a third-party inspection is good, or getting them to send you, you know, what they're doing are some of the ways that you can get an idea of how they're handling pest control.
Yeah, and at your manual, you put a criteria for assessment for the service providers, and yeah. So please, Mr. Muhammad, refer to the manual. You'll find it. It will be very helpful for you. Okay, pheromones, Dr. Sharif, pheromones are the same for every insect? This is the question.
No, they're not. Pheromones are very specific for a certain insect. If I can use an example, here in the US, in agriculture, there may be pheromones for apple maggots. There may be pheromones for cotton boll weevils, for example, in the ag environment. Very specific to those insects. In a food plant, for example, very specific pheromone traps for cigarette beetles, very specific for Indian meal moth. These may not be pests you get in a packing house if you're dealing with fruits and vegetables, but again, in a food plant, you have flower beetles. You have pheromone traps for those insects. So again, to all of our listeners, they are very specific to certain insects. You need to be familiar with the technical aspects of that. So if you just buy a pheromone trap and set it out in the environment, if those insects aren't around, they won't be attracted to it. So I can't repeat enough that they're very specific for certain insects. And again, there's a lot of details in the manual on that, but one trap will not catch all.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Haytham, how to control geckos?
Geckos, again, probably glue boards is the best thing to catch a gecko. They're probably coming in from the outside, obviously. To me, that's a type of lizard. And I would use glue boards to try to catch them if they get inside and find out how they're getting in and try to seal that out. Again, if a door is always open, if it's a ground level door and the bottom isn't sealed correctly, they could be getting in that way. But just make sure doors are sealed, windows are sealed or screened, and use glue boards.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Abdurrahman al-Dusuki, how can we manage the control of microbial growth?
Well, typically it's keeping the area dry in between cleaning. Again, microbes need moisture to grow. So be aware of moisture control. If you can allow the area to dry out thoroughly, that will help. You can use sanitizers, but you really have to deep clean. You have to have good sanitation. Clean the floor drains. Make sure you're scrubbing floor drains with a brush. Again, I go into detail in the manual on this specific thing. Don't forget floor drains. Biofilms build up, and flies breed very nicely in behind those biofilms. So it's not as simple as pouring bleach or pouring sanitizer down a drain. You have to physically scrub that pipe, inside that pipe clean. Use sanitizers, clean cracks and crevices, seal them if possible, dry the area out in between cleanings. Again, if there's debris around, food debris, produce debris, it's kept moist. You're always going to have flies. You're always going to have pests attracted to it, and microbes are going to grow. So sanitation is very important.
Yes, thank you. I have a question for you. As you visited and worked before with the food processing facility in Egypt, what was the most important issue or problem for food safety and pest management, and your recommendation for that? I'm just trying to refresh your memory.
Yes, GMPs, good manufacturing practices, whether it be here or anywhere I visited around the world, basic GMPs are very important to set successful IPM. We talked about that, but again, employee practices. How do employees work in and around a facility? Keeping doors and windows properly closed or screened. Eat, drink, and smoke only in designated areas. Sanitation is important. Again, keeping areas free of debris and litter. Again, we usually allow pests simple ways to get inside facilities. Once we identify those ways and eliminate them, you know, that's 80% of pest control, IPM right there. It's just finding how these pests are getting into the facility and sealing that and keeping them out. And again, what do we do inside that facility that contributes to poor pest control, poor sanitation? Whatever we can do to identify those areas and eliminate that, those are the most critical things in any facility around the world to successful IPM.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so this is a kind of, I don't know, agriculture, IPM, how many traps for each acre, for moon traps? For
yeah, that's really out of my expertise here, but yeah. Again, there are technical advisors that handle those questions. I'm sure you have them in Egypt, but yeah, it's specific for each pest problem, so you'd have to consult those local technical experts for that.
Yeah, of course. Our host today, the Horticulture Exporting Improvement Association, they have their great technical support team, and they have experts in this field, applying IPM at the field level. So, Mr. Azzouz, please get back to Heya, and I'm sure that they will provide the needed support to you.
Yeah, that's okay. That's a whole different area. You know, we don't use economic thresholds in food plants, but that's what you use in agriculture. They use economic thresholds, and you do scoutings, you scout fields, and you look for those specific pests. So that's a whole different kind of IPM than a packing house or a food plant.
Okay, thank you, Jerry. It seems like we don't have other questions. At the end, I'd like to thank you all for your active listening and participation. Thank you, Jerry, for your dedication and volunteering with Farmer to Farmer and Heya. We'll be more than happy to have you again in Egypt to work directly with fresh produce pack houses. Thank you for Heya team, Engineer Medhat. Thank you for you and for all your team, for all the efforts you support food safety and fresh produce pack houses. Thank you for our donor, the USAID, for funding the program. Thank you all for your time. And we'll share with you the presentation, and all our webinars recordings will be available at our YouTube channel. We'll share these links with you as soon as those recordings will be uploaded. And please stay safe, and see you in the coming webinar.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.